Every morning, someone somewhere cracks an egg into a pan without thinking twice. It's the most universal breakfast item on the planet, but here's a strange fact hiding in plain sight. There are over 10,000 species of birds on Earth, and every single one of them lays eggs. You could, in theory, eat duck eggs, goose eggs, quail eggs, even ostrich eggs. And yet, almost every egg you've ever eaten came from exactly one species. So why did humanity, across nearly every culture on the planet, converge on the exact same bird? The answer starts about 8,000 years ago in Southeast Asia, with an animal that wasn't originally domesticated for eggs at all. The ancestor of the modern chicken is the red junglefowl, a wild forest bird still found today in parts of Thailand, Vietnam, and Indonesia. Genetic studies tracing chicken lineages back through history suggest early domestication wasn't really about food, it was about spectacle. Roosters fight, early farming communities bred them for combat and ceremony long before anyone was reliably eating their eggs. Egg laying was a side effect that people gradually noticed was worth exploiting. And here's the detail that actually explains everything that came after. Wild birds don't lay eggs the way farmed chickens do. A wild bird lays a clutch, usually somewhere between 4 and 12 eggs, then stops. Once the nest looks full, an internal signal tells the bird to switch from laying to sitting and incubating. This is true of almost every wild bird species on the planet, and it's a serious problem if you're trying to build a food supply around eggs. You can't scale a diet around an animal that gives you a dozen eggs and then quits for the season. Chickens broke that rule, but only because humans broke it for them. Early farmers discovered a simple trick. Keep removing the eggs from the nest before it looks full, and many hens keep laying instead of switching into incubation mode. Over thousands of generations of selective breeding, this tendency got pushed further and further, essentially breeding the stop signal out of the bird entirely. A modern egg-laying hen can produce over 300 eggs a year. A wild red junglefowl, left alone, produces closer to a dozen. That gap, roughly a 25-fold increase, wasn't a natural trait. It was engineered, one generation at a time, by people who simply kept taking the eggs. No other domesticated bird responded to this pressure as dramatically. Ducks can be bred for higher egg output too. And in parts of East and Southeast Asia, they genuinely are, but ducks need consistent access to water, take up more space, and mature more slowly as a farm system. Quail lay small, delicate eggs in decent volume, but each egg is barely a bite, which makes them a garnish rather than a staple. Geese are seasonal, aggressive, and slow to reproduce, all of which makes large-scale farming difficult. And ostriches, the largest egg you can buy, produce something close to the volume of 24 chicken eggs in a single shell. But a single hen only lays around 40 to 100 eggs a year, and the bird itself is dangerous and expensive to raise. None of these animals hit the same sweet spot chickens did. Fast growth, manageable size, tolerable temperament, and a genetic willingness to keep laying almost indefinitely once the trait was selected for. Then geography did the rest of the work. Because chickens were small, hardy, and easy to transport, they spread along ancient trade routes far more easily than larger livestock. They didn't need pasture. They didn't need to be walked anywhere. A handful of birds could survive a long sea voyage, which is exactly how they ended up colonizing nearly every inhabited landmass on Earth centuries before industrial agriculture even existed. By the time large-scale farming systems were being designed in the 20th century, chickens weren't just one option among many. They were already the default, sitting at the center of a food network that had been quietly building around them for thousands of years. And once the 20th century arrived, industrial breeding locked the pattern in permanently. Specific breeds, like the white leghorn, were selected almost entirely for one trait: relentless, efficient egg production, stripped of the broodiness, size, and slower growth of older farm breeds. Hatcheries, feed systems, cage and coop dimensions, grading machines, cartons, even refrigeration logistics were all built around one specific size and shape of egg. This created something almost like a feedback loop. Chicken eggs weren't just popular anymore. The entire physical infrastructure of modern food production was now engineered specifically around them, which made switching to any other bird not just impractical, but genuinely expensive at scale. This is also why duck and quail eggs still show up in some cuisines but never displace chicken eggs globally. They're not inferior foods. Duck eggs are richer, with a larger yolk to white ratio that many chefs actually prefer for baking, but they exist in a supply chain size for a different bird entirely. One raised in far smaller, more specialized operations. Scaling them up to chicken egg volumes would mean rebuilding an entire logistics system from scratch for a bird that's simply slower and more resource intensive to farm at that size. So the next time you crack an egg into a pan, consider what you're actually holding. It isn't the universal or obvious choice among bird eggs. It's the end result of a specific wild forest bird, selectively pushed for thousands of years to override its own biology, transported across the planet because it happened to travel well, then locked in permanently by an industrial system that was quite literally built around its exact size and shape. Out of 10,000 bird species on Earth, you didn't end up eating eggs from the one that made the most sense. You ended up eating eggs from the one that happened to say yes to domestication first and then never stopped laying.